Iowa pops the bubble of another team from the Big Ten. What does it say about this Iowa basketball team? A rapid reaction to the Iowa win against Ohio State and the matchup next against Illinois. All today, Locked On Hawkeye.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. While you're there, hit the subscribe button. Just takes you a moment and helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by TurboTax. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert. Iowa gets it done against Ohio State after back-to-back losses in the Big Ten tournament to the Buckeyes over the last 2 years. A little payback in this one as Iowa, they just find a way. It wasn't always pretty, but another victory for this Iowa team. 77-70 is the final as Iowa moves on now to the second round of the Big Ten tournament where Illinois awaits. We're going to talk about that matchup a little bit later on. We got lots to talk about today. Some bracketology from the women's bracket and how it's looking for the women's team with their season concluding. What's happening there, we'll get into that. Plus, the seeds are out for NCAA wrestling. Some good, some head-scratching seeds handed out for the Hawkeyes. We will talk about that a little bit later on. But with March here, let's kick things off with college basketball on the men's side and open with that victory against Ohio State. You know, Iowa, what they've done now over these last two games, in terms of looking at it from this, if you would have rolled over a parlay with these two games, would have been paying better than 10-1. That's what we're talking about. The chances of this happening, at least analytically, were about 9%. Winning at Nebraska and then beating Ohio State on neutral floor. And yet they did. It's so great to see this group have a good moment. This has been an incredibly frustrating season. I don't think the expectations that I had and many other people had with this team being an NCAA tournament team were out of whack. I think that was a realistic. Remember, Iowa went into the final game of the regular season a year ago against Illinois on the bubble, and I thought this year's team was going to be a whole lot better than that squad that we saw a season ago. But not just the injuries, Owen Freeman shutting things down, but also we saw throughout the course of the year, Peyton Sandfort was never completely healthy. And it's not to make excuses, but it's the reality. The reality was, and you could see that, and it's not just the K-tape on his shoulder. You could see this is a guy that was not the same Sandfort that we've seen in long stretches of his career. Yeah, he's had shooting slumps. He's had some issues like that before, but not the sustain that we've seen throughout the course of the season and the attempts that he's had. You saw Josh Dix. He had with the wrist injury for a while, and on and on and on. Yet, the good stories that have emerged. Drew Thelwell getting back out there again. Drew Thelwell now shooting 42% from behind the three-point arc. Now, this is a guy early in his career. His first 2 years at Morehead State, he shot 22 and 23% from behind the three-point arc. When he came in a year ago as a senior, he shot 33% and now 42% from behind the arc. And to see good moments for this guy, the consummate winner at Morehead State, I wish the season would have went different for him because he's been so enjoyable to watch. A guy that just does all the right things, and absolutely a couple of good moments for him after being banged up this year, having that ankle injury, what he's turned into. Got to talk about the play again of the big guys inside. And when Owen Freeman made the decision to get the surgery, it was frustrating because there was a lot of season left. It was a hand surgery, and we're not talking about a normal basketball injury that you'd think about in the course of the year. And at that point, we knew the season was basically over. Yet, we've seen Dembele play some of his best games of his career. And he's undersized playing the center position. He's only 6'7", 6'8". He's not the tallest guy in the world. He's thick, but he's given up height a lot of times, basically everybody that he's playing. Yet he rebounded the ball well. He has a career high in rebounds in the win against the Buckeyes. And then, of course, Evan Bronze. And we've talked about Evan a lot and what he's been able to do. He looks like a completely different guy than the one that showed up a year ago coming in from Belmont. What we've been able to see from him. And then off the bench, you get 15 from Brock Harding. He's knocking down, of course, the dagger three at the end to prove to be the difference in the game as things were getting a little bit tight there a couple of different times. Yeah, Brock Harding was able to knock it in and hit the three-pointer. 3 for 3 from behind the arc. Ran the team. A couple of turnovers in there. That's kind of what you're going to get with Brock Harding. But, boy, if he's playing that kind of floor game, that herky-jerky move that he had in the first half, that was a lot of fun. Price Sanford knocking down a couple of shots. That might be going forward. And when the season comes to a close, when it comes to an end, this will be a big part of it. What is the future of Price Sanford? A guy that got to play with his brother for the last couple of years. I really wondered coming into the season where the minutes were going to come from for Price. And his emergence that we've seen here recently, the growth in his game, and not just a shooter. I mean, it's no surprise. We knew he's going to be able to shoot it coming in, and he's shooting 40% from behind the arc. But the other parts of the game, he doesn't turn it over. He plays at an efficient level. He's scored in double figures now 3 consecutive games, multiple 3-pointers in 4 consecutive games. Going back to the Nebraska game when, he put up the rebounding totals that he just on and on and on. He's helping this team in a lot of different ways. It's not just as a shooter. I told you guys coming in, Price, after calling a bunch of his games at the high school level, I thought he was a more well-rounded player. There was more versatility to his game than what you get out of Peyton. And I think that continues. And now going into his final 2 seasons, if Iowa can keep him around and out of the portal, is Price Sanford a guy that can be, a bigger building block than maybe we thought in his final 2 seasons of eligibility. And that'll be something that we'll be certainly watching going forward. But his emergence here in the back half of the year, that's been great to see. Seydou Traore, again, it's up and down. It's inconsistent. But when you see those little glimpses, you get excited. It continues. And now they'll get a shot against Illinois. And Iowa's going to be a big underdog again against the Illini. No surprise on that front. We'll take a peek at the FanDuel line, but Iowa on a neutral floor is going to be an underdog. That's the way that it was against Nebraska, the way that it was against Ohio State. But for Iowa, and currently sits at 9.5, the number. Illinois favored by 9.5. I wanted to get a little silly. And look, let's go here right away. This is not going to happen. However, I just want to put the numbers out to you. So let's say Iowa continues the run. And I know what you're thinking right now. Condon, what are you doing? Let's have some fun. It's March. This thing could end very quickly. Let's go out there and let's play a game. Iowa gets it done against the Illini. Then who waits in the quarterfinals? It's Purdue. It's Maryland. If they beat Maryland, I have them playing Purdue in the semifinals. And then we get real crazy. And they get to the championship game. And they're playing 5 games in 5 days. Of course, with a win in that championship game, it's an automatic bid. But if they lose to, I just put Michigan State in the championship game. Bart Torvik, one of the analytics sites that you hear me reference quite a bit here on Locked On Hawkeyes. Bart Torvik has TeamCast, where you can project win totals, put games in that Iowa or any team would play, and then spits out what would look like for an NCAA tournament resume. Iowa in this scenario would finish the year 20-16, which is crazy, 36 games. They, though, would now go up to 5 quad 1 victories. Remember, 5 days ago, this team didn't have any. And then they'd have 5 in a week. But that aside, they'd be 5-15 against quad 1, 6-0 against quad 2, 11 quad 1 and 2 victories. That's good on the resume. Just 1 bad loss, a quad 3 loss to Minnesota at home. That is the only real blemish on the resume. And in this scenario, Iowa, their net would jump up to 58. Their wins above bubble would be at 53. And as it projects forward, it would have Iowa as the first team out of the NCAA tournament. Behind San Diego State, Indiana, Xavier, West Virginia. You got to look at the totality of the resume. And yes, the team has never made the NCAA tournament as an at-large with 16 losses, And that's what we're talking. I just wanted to see what the numbers look like. Again, it's not going to happen. It's just a little fun, and we can have a little fun. We can be a little goofy from time to time, and certainly did on that one. Bruce Orton, by the way, just an absolute stud. He has been a thorn in the side of a lot of teams in the Big Ten, and ready for him to move on from the Buckeyes. Oh, and didn't even mention Josh Dix. I had that in my notes too. Boy, he's so smooth, such a fun player to watch. And we've talked so much about the aggressiveness, and you want to see more from Josh Dix. But when he gets going, he knocking down that shot, just how good it's been. I was going to have to remain hot from the outside against Illinois. They're going to have to do a lot of the same things that we saw in this one, right? They're going to have to be able to go out there, and they're going to have to be able to knock down shots. You go back to when these two teams faced off a couple of weeks ago, back on February 25th. Remember, Iowa was right there. Had a great comeback after getting down early, had a big run, and took the lead late there in the first half. But then Illinois just a lot better in that second half. But this is still an Illinois team that hasn't shot it overly well at different parts of the season. You look at them, they shoot 31% from behind the three-point arc. So this is the direction we got to go. And it's something we've talked about. If I was going to pull upsets, this is probably what's going to happen. Illinois is going to have to struggle to shoot the ball. All right. 5 o'clock tip-off, Indianapolis. There'll be more Illinois fans than Iowa fans there. But what's the environment going to be? And you kind of look at the slate here today. You got Indiana. They'll be opening things up. And by the time we get to that evening session, you got to figure that most of the Hoosier fans are going to be out of the building. Before it'll be Northwestern and Wisconsin. There'll be Badger fans there, but they'll be checked out. But the night session has Iowa, Illinois, followed up by Purdue, who'll be a late arriving crowd, and USC, who will bring nobody. But if Iowa could hang around, those Purdue fans, they're going to start pulling for the Hawkeyes. And you see this happen so often in the NCAA tournament, as all of a sudden you get that little momentum. Shoot the ball well, cover up the three-point line. Hope they miss some open shots like Nebraska did, like Ohio State did at times. This is not untenable. Is it unlikely? Yeah, I still think it is. I think it's still going to be unlikely that we're going to see Iowa even get this one and continue. But a fun run. These last couple of games gives the positive, gives us something good about this squad, something to remember. You go back in some of the disappointing years and you remember the down moments, you remember, the frustrating moments, but there's also usually a good game or two in there when you look back. And I think that's what we're going to get out of this. Keep Nebraska out of the Big Ten tournament. Keep Nebraska out of the NCAA tournament. Maybe lead to a firing of Fred Hoiberg. Or are they going to give him another year? Ohio State likely pop their bubble and keep them out of the NCAA tournament after they did that to you a year ago. Yeah, these are good things. And a season that wasn't so good, we got plenty of good things here the last week. We continue Locked On Hawkeyes. We'll be back with you after the conclusion of the matchup tonight against Illinois with another rapid reaction podcast. But we got some wrestling to talk about. We got women's basketball to talk about as Charlie Crean of ESPN has updated his bracket. We will talk about that when we come back. Locked On Hawkeyes, Iowa, a winner over Ohio State. Women's hoops and wrestling next. Stay right there. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much we were spending on food delivery. Now I budget a whole lot smarter and save more. And managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Make sure you use the code It's Locked On College at monarchmoney.com. That'll get you 50% off your first year. Once again, monarchmoney.com, and use the code Locked On College for half off your first year with Monarch Money. Today's episode is also brought to you by Factor. Looking to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle. Whether it's calorie smart, protein plus, or keto plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfasts, and grab and go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. I love how Factor takes the stress out of meal planning and using their protein plus meals packed with flavor and kept me full throughout the day. The convenience is unbeatable. No prep, no mess, just great food in minutes. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 off. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code LOCKEDONCollege50 off at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 off. That'll get you 50% off plus free shipping with your first box with Factor Meals. Trent kind of back with you, Locked On Hawkeyes. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. So, a couple of different directions to go. We start first with what we have on the women's basketball front. So, women's bracketology is a little bit different, right? It is not as deep as what you see. So, if you go over to like a website like Bracket Matrix, and I think they have over 100 bracketologists over there. I mean, it's crazy, right? Everybody thinks that they can be a bracketologist, and well, we go that direction. Not the same level on the women's side, and it's improving. Now, as we've talked about throughout the course of this season, we're seeing analytics start to pop up, including Bart Torvik, who has both the men's now and the women's for his the way that he builds the analytical site and the sites there. So this is what we have currently from Charlie Cree. And he has Iowa now locked in as a number 6 seed in the NCAA tournament. Has them heading out to Durham, North Carolina to take on the Dukies if they advance to the second round. The opening round matchup, though, against Fairfield. Good team, wins a lot of games every year. The Stags have been an NCAA tournament team more times than not here recently. Have had some really tremendous seasons. But not just that. I mean, it's not an automatic they're going to go there. But you look at other 6 seeds. West Virginia will be taking on Columbia. That could be a potential matchup for Iowa. Other 6 seeds that are out there. Florida State is a 6 seed, taking on the winner of a play-in game between Washington and Harvard. And the final 11 seed in his bracket is George Mason, an automatic qualifier coming in. That's where Michigan State goes. So the other part, though, and we've talked about this for a long stretch, is Iowa's now ability to make a run in this tournament. The gap between the number 2 seeds and the number 3 seeds is pretty significant. Oklahoma, an Oklahoma team that got blown out by South Carolina, but also the storyline that could be there. If Iowa gets shipped down to Norman, Jenny Baranczyk, you may remember her as Jenny Lillis, longtime Drake coach, a 4-year player at Iowa, tremendous player, played under Bluter. Jan Jensen was her post coach, and what kind of storyline that could be. Another potential number 3 seed is TCU, led by Haley Van Lith. Iowa beat her 2 years ago in the NCAA tournament when she was at Louisville. Beat her last year at LSU. And potentially could beat her for a 3rd time in a 3rd different uniform at TCU. There's another story that is out there. Look, Iowa is still a draw. Iowa still gets eyeballs. We know it's not at the level. Nobody's at the level that Caitlin Clark. But it's still one where Iowa's going to likely get a pretty good TV window. Iowa in that second round matchup is probably going to have an opportunity to play, maybe stand alone. They're going to have that game spotlighted. And this is important for the program. This is a piece for Iowa women's basketball to continue the momentum and building on. And step number 1, year number 1 of Jan Jensen. At minimum, you had to be a tournament team. Mission accomplished. But now you throw in the fact that they have a chance to go on a run. This team is 10-3 over the last month. And you look back, a 2-point loss to UCLA, one of the best teams in the country. You had a shot to win that game. An overtime loss against Ohio State. And then a 1-score loss against the Buckeyes. Ohio State's a top 10 team. UCLA is a top 5 team. And that's it. That's the only teams that you've lost to. And you could have won all of those games. Wherever Iowa goes, wherever they're shipped, nobody wants to see them. Nobody wants to see the Hawkeyes in their bracket. Yes, Iowa's going to have to go on the road. But this team is battle tested. They've won road games. They beat good teams on the road. And yes, of course, they're better at Carver. And we wish there's a couple of games and you go back to the 5-game losing streak. You wish things maybe would have went a little bit different in a couple of those and we'd have a different conversation. Maybe Iowa would be talking about being a top 4 seed and with it being a team that would be projected to host the first and second rounds. That's not going to be the case here. But they put together enough. And what this squad has done recently, it's been incredible. So their numbers analytically, they're 19th in the country at Bart Torvik. 19th in the country. All right, really good squad. This we know. We completely understand that and just how good this team is. But one thing that I like to also do is you can take a look back and kind of find out how a team's playing. And you can sort by date. You can take a look at the date. And for Iowa, we start when Iowa went on the winning streak after the long losing streak. And that was starting on January 22nd. So since January 22nd, we're talking about a pretty big sample size since then. Iowa's a top 10 team. 9th in the country. Ahead of Baylor, NC State, aforementioned Oklahoma, West Virginia, Kentucky, LSU. I was ahead of all of them. And not just ahead of them, but the other numbers. They're doing it on both ends of the floor. Offensively, 10th in the country. Defensively, 17th in defensive efficiency. Iowa basketball gives you a kind of a thought about what still can come. Now, UConn, what Gino Auriemma did wasn't built in a day. It was a slow build before it turned into the monster that it is. And this is not to try to put out the kind of pressure on Jan Jensen that, hey, you got to turn this into UConn. That's not what I'm saying. But you look at the ascension of these programs and the way that they built themselves up and becoming a perennial top 15 type team. Iowa has a chance to do that. Recruiting's going well. Need to reel in a couple of more. NIL budget is in good shape. And they're going to have work to do after the season comes to a close in the portal. But that aside, it's about the here and now. And we will have that bracket. We'll have a rapid reaction coming up on Sunday night after we get the bracket on the men's side. And, of course, the women's side then that happens a day later. We'll have all the reaction right here on Locked On Hawkeyes. We'll have reaction, obviously, to the NCAA women's bracket. And we'll have reaction tonight after Iowa, Illinois. We continue Locked On Hawkeyes. Some more news as the seeds are out for NCAA wrestling. We will talk about where the Hawkeyes are seated, who's good, who's bad. That's next. Locked On Hawkeyes. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by TurboTax. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you're going to get any money back. And then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. All so you can get the most money back, guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Trent kind of back with you one final time as we continue Locked On Hawkeyes, looking at the seeds for Iowa wrestling, the way that this broke down for the Hawkeyes. So as we talked about, just touched on earlier in the week, Joey Cruz did get in a large bid, and great to see, but it's not going to be an easy path for him. A 29 seed for Joey Cruz after his 10th place finish in the Big Ten. He was the number 5 seed there. So he will have a long path to make it on the All-American stand coming out of that. Drake Ayala, that was the good news, though. Disappointing end, getting stuck in the Big Ten finals, but he still earns a number 2 seed. You look at the totality of the junior's resume, really good there. He had a couple of big victories throughout the course of the year. So a number 2 seed, and looks to be a pretty good path for Drake Ayala to make a run and make his way potentially into the NCAA finals. It's a 5 seed for Kyle Parko, as Parko looking to finish on the podium for the 5th time in his collegiate career. He has some good wins. Ridge Lovett amongst them at the top. Also has got a win against Webster out of Illinois. But it's the losses to Van Ness that we saw, taking a loss against Lovett back in the semifinals. I think that lowered as he'll open up against Dylan Gilcher of Michigan at 157 pounds. This was an eye-opener. A Jacori Teemer, an 18 seed. Teemer was ranked number 1 this year. And this can go one of two ways. Of course, he's been injured, and that's a part of it. He's been an All-American before, though. And the thing when you do something like this, after the hamstring injury that he had against Iowa State, you have a guy that, is there. Like, talent-wise is not the issue. Health remains a question. But for the other people on his path, you can't be real pleased about that. You're like the 15 seed, who he'll face. Johnny Lovett out of Central Michigan. All right, 18 seed, I'll be a slight. Nope. Here comes a guy that was ranked number 1. Good luck. Michael Caliendo gets a 3 seed. The difference between the 2 and 3 seed, you're on the bottom half of the bracket from the number 1, so that's not a bad deal. I kind of like the path of Patrick Kennedy at 174, getting the 11 seed. I think he can make a little bit of a run. Being on the other side, a couple of the big names on the bracket, that definitely helps out. Also an 11 seed for Game Arnold. I think those are right in the realm that makes sense. Stephen Buchanan, he gets a number 2 seed at 197. Fine with that one. And then Ben Keeter, number 5, kind of in a way, almost wished he was a number 6 seed, but look, number 5 seed. Keeter, what he did in the Big Tens, that was probably the story of the Big Ten tournament on the positive side for Iowa wrestling. Ben Keeter, after that early loss, battling all the way back to finish in 3rd place. That was some good wrestling. Doing that on the backside, I think, said a lot about Ben Keeter, and hope for his development to continue and have a good finish to his season, get on the stand, become an All-American this year, and then continue to build from there. NCAAs, we are a week away from the NCAA wrestling tournament. Why it is that week, it's a conversation we'll have another time. Thanks for being with us, as always, and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We'll be back with you after the Iowa-Illinois matchup in the Big Ten tournament with the Rapid Reaction podcast right here on the Locked On feed. What you want to do, hit subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening, hit us up with a 5-star review. It'll let you know when we're live. It'll also let you know and help us out getting in front of more Hawkeye fans. Thanks for being with us. We will talk to you again after Iowa-Illinois, and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen. Hey, for your second listen, make sure you check out Locked On College Basketball with Isaac Shoddy and Andy Patton. March is here, so be the most informed college basketball fan throughout the madness. Find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll talk to you again later on this evening. Until then, go Hawks.